I will try to introduce a little bit where this comes from, why did we create this, and show briefly what's in it, what are the terms declared, and then I will try and put it in the context, into the GBIF context, and show where it fits in. It's targeting data flow and more the specifics than the generality of the diving core. So where does this come from? We have a gene bank community, germplasm community. Worldwide, there is like 140 well-established larger collections. In total, 1,750 estimated collections worldwide of smaller size. And this is a portal that's developed and showing the original collecting places of all this material in this collection. It's been shared up to GBIF very easily. It's the same record level as the occurrence. There are specimens in collections. And the reason why we wanted to approach this GBIF technology in the beginning, 7-8 years ago, was that we have a data flow into multiple purposes. There are more crop-specialized portals. There are more regional portals for Europe, for the US, where they have GRIN. For Canada, we have also a GRIN system. And then we are building this global portal. And the data will have a different format. There will be different terms included in these data flows. So we found that these data publishing toolkits, first the BioCAS and now second the IPT based on the diving core, could help us to have a more efficient data publishing path. We had an experiment, a prototype, where we installed it worldwide at selected gene banks in the CGR system in 2005. This was based on creating an extension to the ABCD. So it's included in the release 206, which became a TEDRIC standard. And then 2 years ago, we made the same experiment using the IPT and the diving core extension to gene banks. And then we installed it at selected gene banks in Europe. So this is why our objective, why we were doing this. The diving core is explicitly said to be extensible. It extends from a doubling core. And we have the same record level as one of the core types, the occurrence. So it's a one-to-one relation with our collection objects. And we released a draft version in August 2009, which we used in these first experiments. And it's important also to consider that this extension is an existing standard, MCPD. I will show in the next slide. We also follow very much the model of diving core, created a Google code site. This is the first namespace I used. We have started to look at the PRL to have it more stable. So this is coming soon. The multi-crop passport descriptors are the result of 30 years of standards development in the agricultural sector. There are a number of crop-specific descriptor lists which have been developed, and they've been managed and released from Rome, from Biodiversity International. And they are used across the whole domain of agriculture. There are differences of being used, but they are like the model, the gold standard for how you share your data in this community. They are usually released in printed form or in PDFs. There's no identifiers for the terms. You have numbers for them, just 1, 2, 3, and so on. You have a name, and you have an acronym and a definition. So what we did for the extension was very much just to start with these terms and create a namespace for them, a URI for them. And wherever they matched terms in diving core, we were not creating any new terms, we just reused that one. So, for example, for taxon, there's no no need to create any new terms. We just included directly off the Darwin core terms. You have the sample in the GenBank collections. They needed a few extra terms. For example, the cultivation status, if they are wild, if they are modern cultivars and land races. That was necessary. And how do you store them? If they are stored for long term, short term, medium term. Otherwise, you have many of the terms just coming imported straight in from the Darwin core. We have a system where you can request, these are living samples, so you can request them from one gene bank to another. That is a whole set of terms not covered in Darwin core. The most important terms missing in Darwin core, for our perspective, is the breeding event. The samples, they are man-made. They are a result of cultivation, domestication. So that was a whole set domain of terms missing. The collecting event is, you see, just straight off Darwin core. We added one because we have this particular institute coding system we needed to transmit. Then also we have a system where we make safety duplicates. There are living collections, and you can split them in seed samples and ship them. They should always be shipped in one, preferably two, safe backup locations. So they're not only stored in one collection, but mostly in 3 collections. And then, because there are economic values involved in this, there are some international regulations you have to follow. So they also needed to be transmitted what regulation apply for each specimen. And then we started to expand. Darwin core has this measurement and facts. In the gene bank world, this is a very important set of terms. They are measuring properties of the food crops, like resistance to diseases, tolerance to cold, early frost, things like that. The trait experiment is the conditions under which these measurements were made. They can be very afflicted. They are not genetically stable across environments. And also, when you do them in different growth stages, they will have a huge impact. That's covered here in the growth stage. But the important thing here is that you have a trait and you identify them by the method. And there's been development completely outside this set of terms for the crop ontology to describe those methods. And there's initiative to get that into the plant ontology. So it's developed based on the plant ontology. And I understand that they are trying to get those terms proposed and included in the plant ontology. So those would then be identified by this identifier. So they're picked up, and you would just score here the values for it and the environmental conditions where the experiments were made. So this is the terms. They have been expressed as a SCOS vocabulary in RDF. But the important thing for us was to get this into the data flow, the data mobilization flow. And Darwin core has this Darwin core archive, which GBIF has picked up. And it's based on that you have a core entity. And the Darwin core archives, they are more limited than the Darwin core. They are using a taxon entity as the core or an occurrence entity in the core. So that there are more entities covered in the Darwin core, which is not implemented as cores. Wouldn't you agree so? So that's not a problem for us when it comes to the specimens, because they are one-to-one with occurrence, if you don't take this duality of the occurrence and organism specimen ID. So we have this germplasm extension, and that's being declared just as an XML list of terms, picking terms from this vocabulary of terms, where we extend. And here you can pick and match from different vocabularies, so not necessarily exclusively from the Darwin core and the Darwin core extension, but from Dublin core, from many similar, and from ontologies. So the point is just that you include the the qualifier name for the term you include in this XML list. And the purpose of this XML list is for the IPT to be able to pick the term so that you can map it to values in your database, in your dataset. And to do that, GBIF has developed this tool where you can get interface where you can define this list of terms that you want to use. You just import them from elsewhere. You don't declare any definitions or anything here. You just import terms from existing vocabularies or ontologies. This is developed in Drupal. There are some issues about it, but it's a good help, I think, to help people to define those extensions and make the XML list that will work with the GBIF tools. So what we are thinking now on putting this into a system is that we need tools to help the community develop the terms which are missing, which they need to extend the existing vocabularies and so on. And building on the Darwin Core principle with simple flat list of terms with a focus on the definition of the term rather than the semantics. We've been looking at a wiki with 1 page per term where you define the term. You have another tool developed in a Clarion in an EU project, ISOCAT, which can also give you the interface to establish and create the terms with the definition of the term. And it's possible that many of the, like the invasives, like communities in Tadric, they have them just in similar formats like Excel. So people could, we imagine people could develop terms very easy like that, and we could have a system to help them to get them into an RDF vocabulary. The RDF vocabularies, as we imagine here, is that they would be managed by expert groups, preferably in Tadric or other communities. So they would have these tools to develop vocabulary terms fitting to the expertise of those.
So I mentioned OntoFox yesterday. OntoFox is part of a collection of very nice, simple tools for converting Excel spreadsheets into ontologies. So this is quite established as a methodology now.
And if not, I should look at
it's all free. Yes.
Ontodog?
Yeah. So you
It is Fox.
but there are some. There's OntoB. Yeah. So.
There's another tool called Rightfield, which takes Excel spreadsheet forms and takes ontologies, lists from ontologies, and helps you populate the forms in Excel spreadsheets as well.
What did you say it was called?
Rightfield. Just one word.
Right? I didn't get it, sorry.
Right, R-I-G-H-T, field.
The thinking is that these would be not for the larger community, but more limited expert groups doing this. And then this would be for more larger community, that they would create their extensions for sharing data through the using the IPT and so on, using tools like this vocabulary server. All the extensions and the controlled vocabularies, the controlled vocabularies would also be defined using an ontology or perhaps a vocabulary. And here, what you would create in this tool is just an XML list of the concepts picking from multiple ontologies. All these resources will be registered into the GBIF registry, and there's also a tool here where you can browse them and see how many extensions and vocabularies are using the same terms and see them. So this would be where they are published and made available to the GBIF tools, and we also imagine that they could go out to Scratchpads and other tools from this registry. In addition to this model using tools and expert groups to manage their own domain, we've been talking about in the Vibrate project having a community wiki forum you could, one usage is that you would simply import terms like diving core terms, other terms from ontologies into this and have one page per term and have the community discuss them, trying to propose improvements to them, and helping to understand those terms and make them available so that they would be picked up and reused when building these extensions.
Free access to them? Is there free access to this wiki?
It's free and open to read, and you can create yourself an account. We haven't yet established a tool. We have this tool at GBIF as a prototype. We are considering if we should use this species ID. It's hosted in Berlin at BioWiki Farm by Gregor Hagedorn. So that's one thought. And then you could imagine that if somebody here needs and creates a new term, you could include that one also in such XML lists. But the point is that that would create a bit of anarchy, and we would probably like to move these terms into managed expert groups, which would try to divide labor and make sure that those terms get a long-term anchoring. But anyway, it's a model where we could try and pick up, and it's a low threshold to enter. So I think that could be stimulating community participation. To discuss these approaches, we created here this vocabulary management group. It's proposed as a Tadric task group, and you are welcome to join and make suggestions about how to make this management of these vocabularies work in a way that would include the community, but try and stimulate standards. Yep, so that was.
So I can't criticize because I couldn't read the type. But I will do my best over lunch to study some of your lists, and then in my wrap-up I will make some remarks.